Showtime! Hey, we're live. I'm with my friend, moderator, Nashville player, and super cool guy, Boss Katana abuser also. We're live. If someone is online, we were having technical difficulties prior to going live with this, and
working pretty solid at the moment, though. So I think we'll be
let me check something. We're live, and my sound is quite good. So okay, so Gabe, let's jump. We were having technical difficulties prior to starting with this, and usually I take those 10 minutes to just chat with my guest and have fun, and keep it cool, remove the stress. So hey, I have you on the show. Thank you very much. This is very appreciated.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, JB.
Sorry?
Thank you so much for having me, JB.
It's super cool, super cool. So, yep. I'll start with, how are you right now? Are you in confinement? Are you home? And are you safe? Just, I'm just curious.
Yeah, definitely doing our best to stay in as much as possible. I'm making very few, runs to the stores for essentials. Other than that, trying to get out and enjoy the park. The weather is beautiful right now, so we're doing our best.
Awesome. Weather here is ugly and it's cold. Well, not that cold, but it's been gray, cloudy, rainy, and blah. Okay. I can't wait to. I hate the month of April. Anyway, let's jump together in this interview. And you're my guest. I'm not supposed to talk. You're supposed to talk. So, and thanks for Mr. Thompson to join the show. So, how did it start? Why the guitar, Gabe? What happened? Well, how come you started playing the instrument?
So kind of interesting story. I started pretty young. I had a really tiny old Casio keyboard that had the little ROM tapes that you would put in there for these songs. Later I came across the same one, but it was a little too expensive because it was it's a vintage memory at that point. But anyway, I was about 6 years old or younger, and I would just memorize. I think it was a lot of Christmas songs. It must have been around Christmas. And I would sit there and just do the melodies, Frosty the Snowman. And then my dad would come home from work and I'd say, I'd be all excited, like, hey, come here and check this out. And every day it would be a new song and I would just kind of pick it out by ear and then memorize the notes. So then, they're like, well, we need to get this kid in some music lessons. Of course, they offered up piano, but at that time, MTV had launched and I was obsessed with the Van Halen Jump video. So for some reason I wanted to play guitar.
Were you able to play it on your
synthesizer song? But I just saw them jumping, in the flames and the spandex, and I was like, I want to play guitar, which actually meant I wanted pyrotechnics and big hair. But anyway, that was
not like mine,
Yeah, I'm getting there. I try to hide it as much as I can. What do? But yeah, so it was like that Van Halen video, and I started taking lessons at a young age, and I was a god awful student. I mean, I drove my teachers nuts because I would come in, and they'd say, did you practice your thing this week? And I would just look at them and shake my head. No, I didn't practice at all.
Okay.
So I was infuriating as a student, but I was always around music. My dad listened to just about everything under the sun. I remember Blue Oyster Cult records and Bob Marley and jazz, Earl Klugh and George Benson. And so I got all this vast musical soundscape. And that was always, it took me a while to figure that out, but I was more of just a feel player. I would just hear sounds. Some guys are a lot more technical minded than I, and that's great. Whatever works. So I just grew up wanting to express those sounds, get that out of my head, and guitar came around at a young age, even though it took me a while to get proficient.
How old were you when you started?
I was I think going on 7 years old with my first lesson. So I mean,
and what was your first guitar?
It was actually a Les Paul copy. I'm trying to think of the brand. not an Orville, but something. It was like a nice copy. In fact, I would love to get my hands on that. One of my uncles may still have that in Michigan. I've heard,
cool.
so
Yeah,
it might
cool.
be a cool one to get my hands on. It's funny that'll take me to my first guitar that I have over here, and that is
you can pick it up. Yep. Oh,
a little dark in the corner. This is a 1981 Ibanez.
Wow.
Les Paul. I want to say copy, but it's not. You notice the body has a swoop on that side there.
Yep.
Right here, so it's a post lawsuit era.
Yeah.
But
looks nice.
Fantastic guitar, and I wasn't much of a Les Paul player, but you always want one, but I didn't have the $3,000 laying around. So I found this when my wife and I were in Portland, Oregon, and fantastic price. And it was funny. I'm sitting here playing on it one day along with some John Schofield, who's one of my favorite players, and I'm just like, wow, this bridge pickup just sounds so close to that Schofield tone. I'm getting that grit out of it, same attack, and sounds silly to say that because it's hey, it's the hands, right? But later I read an article, and boom, he starts talking about his 1981 Ibanez. That was the one that changed it for him, and I started laughing because I'm like, oh, it's probably the exact same pickups from that factory.
Maybe. But what's fun? I really love those stories when a guitar picks you instead of you picking the guitar. You try it out and then, oh wow, I can't leave it in the store. I must go home with this one. It's super.
It was a ridiculous price too. My wife was with me on the trip, and she's a sweetheart. So of course I was like, I think I shouldn't spend the money, but I have to get this guitar. The same old story. And she's so wonderful. She's backed me every time. Every time I got serious, I'm like, I have to buy this guitar. Then she'll listen, and she's like, okay,
we may receive some comments if she has a sister or something, sometime.
Yeah.
I'm so privileged. My wife also goes with my craziness about having guitars and gears, and so
it seems like you have a pretty fantastic collection there. It looks like you've got
mostly cheap. Well, but today it's not my turn; it's your turn. So, what was your first amp? what was your first amp?
Was actually a solid state Rickenbacker amp, which I wish I still had, just to see what it sounds like. I mean, I remember it was it could get loud. It was it's like a silver face look style, and it got really loud, mostly clean tones. But back then, I was probably not yet into Nirvana. It was probably like Metallica, Megadeth, so I didn't want clean tones. I just wanted to hide behind a wall of distortion, and so I was going into that era of my life, and oh boy, I hid behind a lot of bad distortion.
What was your pedal, or what is the amp was producing the distortion?
So that's a funny story. Again, obviously, I mentioned my father a lot. He was always backing me on this and kind of pushing me along. So at one point, I grew up pretty modest, so there wasn't a lot of money to throw around. So the purchases that were made we tried to think it out, and so he ended up getting this early digital effects processor, because that's the way we're going, back. This is like the 80s or something, or maybe early 90s.
What model did you get?
ME6.
ME6. Who was making this?
Boss ME6. So it's like a way early predecessor to the ME50.
Oh my, yes. I just Googled it. Okay.
Super old. And it's funny because it's probably still out there, but I think I left a review on HarmonyCentral.com when I was in high school.
Let me share the screen.
Of course, I thought I knew. I'm just like, oh, this is a great unit. It covers all the bases, and I look back and that's it. And I broke. It was built pretty badly. I broke about every button on it. I mean, I had it for years, and my problem that I found. I think it's very important as a player, kind of know yourself. And
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I'm just even when I was a kid, I was basically an old man trapped in a kid's body. So I just need a couple knobs. Give me a couple knobs to turn. That's me. If I get too much technology, I easily thrown off the path, and whatever I was gonna write, it won't happen. So it's like I need the most simple analog solution. So that thing, I would spend hours and days and weeks programming, all kinds of tones, and I didn't really learn anything about. I would say I didn't come out of that knowing how to dial in an amp. I just got lost in a sea of ridiculous tones, and I come back a week later, I'm like, that doesn't sound good. so after later in life, I started to get away from more digital stuff, which is ironic to settle. I do love the katana, but it's coming full circle, with that knowledge of.
But how did you get involved with the katana? Because everyone in Nashville was using it, or you came in a store?
Yes. Nashville is, I will say this, that there's fantastic players, but we're not always reinventing the wheel. We're kind of looking around. Hey, here's a fantastic, solid player. The guy's, played for a lot of big names or played the Grand Ole Opry a ton of times, and look what he's playing. So. And look how he sounds. So you'll see a lot of similarities versus, Portland, Oregon was the opposite, very experimental. So it's like you got weird pedals, weird bands. Everybody wants to do something different. In Nashville, we ultimately just want to. I kind of want to say do the same thing, but the same thing is just keeping it solid, play to the record, great tone. Consistency, because it's basically a job, so there's less room to just kind of make some jazz and make some art. No one they're to play, so it's like just kind of play what people want to hear. So anyway, katanas got around. I mean, they really quickly became the most popular amp I saw on Lower Broadway in Nashville, which for those who are not familiar, Lower Broadway until very recently was 7 days a week, bar after bar after bar after bar.
Little anecdote. I went to Nashville for work. I think about 10 years ago. And I spent one evening on the Broadway Street, and I was walking from place to place, and there was music everywhere. That was a very interesting evening.
It's wild. So you know what I'm saying then when you're walking down the street, the bars are they don't look big, but they actually go back very deep. So they're narrow. They're not very wide. So you're walking and it's bar after bar after bar, but then you look in and it's packed deep. So they're able to have so many bars on one block, and they're all playing 4 hour sets. And a lot of the players are playing back to back.
It's funny. I met in one bar just for fun. I went to talk with the musician, and they were all splitting after the show and going in different other bars with other bands and keeping the wheel turning, and they would play all evening, let's say from whatever. I was there at like 5 o'clock and I left around midnight, and these musicians would play all along the street, in different bars.
Yeah, I have so much respect for the players there. They really grind it out. I mean, I know it got to the point where you call it a double shift if you play 2 4 hours.
Okay.
Hopefully back to back. Sometimes you have to split it, and you have 4 hours to kill right in the middle, and that's pretty tiresome.
And I remember one of the guy walking out of the bar with a huge amp. So I bet the katana must be something very cool for you guys over there. So because they're light, they offer a lot, and you can grab them, and you don't need a huge pedal board. You have a bunch of interesting effects inside of it, so you can move quickly to another gig and just plug in and start again.
Well, what's ironic is that I don't know any of the guys. Everybody still uses their own pedal board, and I think it's just because a lot of them, they're just set in their way, so they just use it as a clean channel.
Okay.
Throw their pedal board in, but the amp is relatively light. It's 32 pounds. So light compared to their vintage twin reverb or whatever, and just so many tonal options, and then it's solid state. So those clubs downtown are very old, so the power is is atrocious. So you'll blow tubes left and right if you don't have a brown box, or some type of good attenuator, which I found out the hard way. A lot of us did. We're just like, why am my amp always in the shop? And then so again, the Katana was literally up and down the street everywhere. I had to put a sticker on mine because I was playing Alan Jackson's AJ's bar, and I come in and there were 4 amps, 4 Katanas there, just like waiting on the side and the ones on the stage. And I'm like, I'm gonna lose. I'm gonna plug in somebody else's, and it's gonna be the wrong settings, and I'm gonna have a rough night. So I threw a sticker on mine, just so identify it.
This is my Katana.
Show that real quick.
Oh really? Oh, you still have? Okay, cool.
So yeah, here it is plugged in the corner, and also I velcroed my GAFC on top.
Nice.
So I can still carry it down the street.
Yeah, and I see your sticker. Oh, nice.
I'm playing classic country with a Rick and Morty sticker on the amp.
This is cool.
That kind of made sure I didn't lose mine in the shuffle.
You said you started in the early days of MTV. You were like, so who were your early influences when you started playing?
Yeah, early big ones. I mean, as a kid, definitely Megadeth "Rust in Peace" is still one of my favorite albums of all time.
Cool.
A pure masterpiece. I love that the Onion does they still have one that goes around every once in a while, and it's just sarcastic. Something about how humans still create art, even though Megadeth "Rust in Peace" is the greatest thing that you can ever create. And I just laugh because they're not wrong.
and Martin Friedman was playing on this one.
Oh, so ridiculous! Yeah, he's
this
is amazing.
An awesome one.
My buddy was telling me, it's funny. I love those players, but I never got really great at shredding. Like I always I worshipped it from afar, but I was more of like a funky blues player, and my sweep picking. I can't sweep pick my way out of a wet paper bag. I'm terrible at it. But there's so many guys that they can do it so well. So I leave it alone. I'm like, you guys, keep sweeping so I can watch and I can be astounded, and I'll do my thing.
So the early Gabe, I can call it Gabriel or Gabe. Gabe is fine.
Either. I go either. It doesn't matter to me.
So early Gabe is learning guitar, very influenced by heavy bands, and how come early Gabe become Nashville Gabe, and he plays country, and I'm just curious,
That was a lot later down the line. I didn't have a lot of country influence. It was a lot more jazz, classic rock, a lot of classic rock. I loved funk and blues. I loved the jazz stations. Country, I remember my mom listened to country a little in the 90s, and I was into Nirvana and maybe listen to Snoop Dogg or something, but I was not having it with the line dancing and stuff. But so I heard it though. And that was what's funny. I used to thank her as I'd be on stage in Nashville, and I'd play this song that I remember hearing it when I was a kid, and I'm like, oh, that got me through it, because Nashville, you don't always get a chance. They don't stop and say, can we play the song? They kick it off and you're going. So I'd always say, Mom, you kind of saved my butt with all those country songs. Because anyway, the progression of country happened in Portland, Oregon. I started playing with kind of more, folk, bluegrass, acoustic, Americana type stuff. Hooked up with a band called Left Coast Country and started touring with them for a while. Mm-hmm. They wanted, kind of requested more of an electric Telecaster style chicken picking thing. So I just got in the basement with a metronome and
you
really started with a Johnny Highland video, an old Hot Licks video. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is 2 years later, I'm at this like invite only guitar player party, and it's mostly gear guys, hosting it, and a bunch of big names were invited. But the first guy I see walking in, and I just missed him to just sit down and jam would have been, Johnny Highland, and nicest guy, but it's just ironic to me. It's like he has no idea that I was just watching his videos just a couple years ago, and I'm learning the ropes, and then that became something in Nashville, a style, the chicken picking style worked for me, and a lot of people kind of got at me for what I was doing with that, and I never saw that coming. It's just you go
It's
with
awesome. It's always fun, when you start in one direction and one door opens, and it opens your mind. You learn new stuff, and this is interesting. So you started very young. You've always been playing, but did you stop at one point? Did you took a break, or I don't know? Did it happen, or you always kept playing whatever?
Yeah. There's a time, kind of, and honestly too, I wasn't always that serious. So there's a lot of times just goofing off. I learned a couple songs here and there. I use a great example. In high school, we kind of, the measure of a player was how many Metallica songs and solos that you knew, for our little group of friends. And there was this guy, Dusty Pauken, who, at the time I could eat him up on the Metallica stuff, right? And so no worries, right? A couple years later, I ended up working at the now defunct Mars Music chain. It's kind of like a Guitar Center. They went Chapter 11 right when I started working there. Yeah. So I couldn't even buy, as I said, couldn't buy a beer back then. But here I am, a couple years later, and boom, Dusty is working at Mars Music with me. And the cat is an amazing jazz guitar player. It's been like 3 years, and he's better than I'll ever be at that time, in like 2 years. And I met his parents, and they said, well, unlike other kids that you would have to kind of, tell them to practice, you could not get Dusty away from the books. He studied. So now he plays every instrument. He teaches. He's fantastic. And I wish I could say I had the same problem of, I could keep my nose out of the book. I love learning. I love playing guitar. I get by, but everybody's different. And I kind of found personally when I started letting go a little bit, became a little more free. It doesn't work for everybody. I mean, always, learn your stuff. But John Scofield had mentioned, he's like, I don't come into a passage thinking about, oh, it's this chord into that chord, so let me throw a diminished blah 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 for this feel. He's like you learn that so that way you know how it feels, and then you just kind of like, and he's such a interesting, wild, creative player, in my opinion. So I love that. Just like I don't want to say less streamlined approach, because he could be streamlined, but just the fact that he allows himself to just get wild. And, I found when I stopped hammering myself over a metronome, and I started getting better. Just playing out and coming up with ideas instead of always. But that's personal. I think I get a little neurotic if I'm just, hammering over something. I'll just think about how terrible, like I'm not playing it as good as the guy online. And so
I was at NAMM 2 months ago, and 12 years old playing guitars, and they like shredding, like they're playing Malmsteen music, and I'm like, he's 12 or 13 or something. I can't even play this. And I was like, this is crazy. But yeah,
it's a fine line between being inspired and wanting to go home and just set your guitars on fire because you don't want to touch them.
That's funny. So, are you in a band right now, or are you just playing as an hired musician? What's your?
Had a transition right now. So. I'll give it, I guess, the long version of a short story, a short version of a long story. Either way, I could do either way. So it was in Nashville, 6 years, and my wife and I have a 1-year-old little girl, Genevieve, just wonderful, just toddling around, wants to eat everything, explore, et cetera. So we decided to come back to Oregon, just be closer to family. And my plan is always stay as in the music as much as possible. But I was going to take a year and just kind of reconnect with the scene here, and then launch a few original projects. It's a different scene. There's not quite the opportunity to just get in, just burning and earning, as a musician. So, and also I wanted to start creating and again reconnect with so many of these great musicians that I haven't seen in years on some original stuff.
Okay.
Okay, so I hop on a Nashville. We just dodged the tornado, and now it's quarantine coronavirus. So it, the future's a little, I don't want to say uncertain, but right now, the immediate plan of just jumping back into the scene, which seemed to be working, us getting some great jam sessions and getting invited to play with some of my favorite musicians. So we'll see what happens, I guess. And also, I was getting a lot of work when I first got here, kind of being the Nashville guy. A lot of work filling in on country gigs and top 40 kind of bar gigs. So I was getting a lot of paid weekend work, to supplement. But we've only been back just a couple months, so just to put it in perspective, it's been a whirlwind, to move here and just a couple months in to see what's happening and adjust. Because
and we have a Wolverine here that says hello to us, and those tornadoes were. Can you see the comments in the screen?
Absolutely, I can. Yeah, you got to watch out, man. Those I can't believe how lucky so many of my friends got in Nashville when that tornado came through. By the end of the day, it was over 400 friends marked safe on Facebook, which was just crazy. There was a musician in this scene. I don't know him, well personally, but his comment was that he got hit so hard that the roof ripped off of his building. His house got demolished down to only one wall, and he was left hanging onto the toilet for dear life. So that is something I can't even imagine, going through that and holding on to something in your house while the tornado is. But so many folks got lucky, and anyway, it's crazy, crazy times.
Yeah, crazy times, and we live in weird times right now. So back to gear and guitars. When you were scrolling with your phone camera, we saw a couple of nice guitars, a nice black Tilly, if I'm fine. So, what's your favorite piece of gear right now? Do you have one, or?
I mean, the one I've been playing more than anything is kind of an odd bird. This is my friend John Lippy, who I met working at Pro Guitar Shop. The guy that does all the demos. So before that went defunct, and he went to Reverb, we worked at the shop. John is a fantastic musician. Wow. I used to play in the jam band Karmic. Yeah. So he makes these, it's called the Little Lippy, Lippy box. Let me see if we can show you here.
Oh, nice. Yep, we can see it. Lippy box. Yep. Yeah,
Lippy box. I got to plug him because, he makes fantastic instruments. But the thing you'll notice is that it's a full-scale guitar, but slightly smaller body.
Smaller body.
McNally pickups that are just the most articulate pickups I've ever played. So this thing has just been kind of the number one since I've got it. It's there's something, no guitar really emotes like this one.
Awesome.
So and it's super fun. It gets a lot of looks, with the reverse headstock.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and it's a Tilly is the new trend right now. We were having that discussion with Trent Berry on my previous interview, and there's the Tilly shape is kind of coming back strong right now. So.
Oh yeah, I'm obviously a big fan. I think right now we've got a few. That's the Little Lippy. Now for me, they're all. I'm a single coil guy. Nothing wrong with doing something else with it, but for what I'm doing. And then this was the one.
Yeah.
I went out to Nashville with. This is a custom builder, Marco Bass Guitars. So he's primarily a bass guitar builder, but when I was just getting started, this was the custom one he built. And no joke, I have old pictures. I mean, this back.
Yeah.
Was all black when I started.
Okay, so this is a real relic guitar,
Yeah, it absolutely is. No, it's a flat black finish, so it was kind of made to relic up pretty quickly. So I mean, I'm cheating. I'm cheating just a little bit, but yeah, I love it. It's got a great. I love the
Good.
touch of black
So,
on the headstock, and again, I single coils. Those are all hand wound by Marco. He does his own stuff. Fantastic human being, and he makes amazing bass guitars and guitars. And then while I'm on Telecaster,
yeah.
and I always got to plug Kurt Mangan's strings, the greatest strings I've ever played. They get me through all the 4-hour shifts in Nashville, even if they're playing 3 in a row. Just an amazing company. I'm super picky about strings, and I know no better strings and no better company.
Great.
Anyway,
Very cool. Yeah.
on to this cute little redhead here.
Yeah. Looks nice. And it got.
This one is kind of a Frankenstein. So,
3 pickups.
yeah, I'm not sure the pickups. I want to say, gosh, what was the Von Scow maybe on this? It looks like the Gretsch style. But and the body, I'm pretty sure, is an 81 Japanese.
Oh, really? Okay.
Body, yeah. Tom Buller and I had kind of been talking. He's a fantastic player and country singer. But anyway, he's got one very similar, and we started talking, and that was always the theory. I guess I'll tell the story on this one. I played a lot of gigs, for years, and relatively few gear failures. I mean, things happen, but not a whole lot of nightmares. And usually, if something happened, I mean, I wouldn't be totally, surprised. Like, oh, okay, I guess that cable's kind of old. I always bring spares. I always try to back up quite a bit. So, anyway, 1 year for CMAs. That's the Country Music Award. They do a festival in the summer, CMA Fest in Nashville. It's a big event, a lot of gigs, and I've been playing for an artist, Jay Bragg, for a while, and he was coming up pretty well. This is before he started doing some opening gigs for Alan Jackson. And so we're playing in front of the Bridgestone where the Predators play, and I'm not kidding you, JB, that week I had more gear failures than ever. Every guitar in my life just broke. Something broke. I had a truss rod. It started off with a truss rod.
Oh, wow.
A Marco Strat. Fantastic. Best Strat I've ever played in my life. It's so amazing. And, brand new. And I take it in to get it set up. And the guy's like, hey, there's just, something wrong. Your truss rod's snapped. I'm like, it's like a brand new guitar. But, anything you build, things can happen. I'm sure it was something in the tension of that steel. Anyway.
Interesting story. Sad story, but interesting at the same time.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just guitar after guitar. They all break. So I ended up picking up a few, and even one of them that I picked up died in the middle of the second show. Volume pot ended up going out, and a guy came and help me out. I posted, there's a lot of Nashville forums, for the musicians. So if something like that happens, just post immediately in the middle of your gig, grab your phone, say SOS, I'm at Alan Jackson's and my guitar just broke, because a guy came down there, let me borrow it. I mean, I played this guitar for 3.5 hours, and let him sit in. Anyway, it was fun. I gave him some money at the end of the gig too, which he reluctantly took. And I says, you got to, I played your guitar. You have to take some money because I'll sleep. But anyway, and that's where I ended up getting this red one here from the fantastic folks at, oh God, what is it called? GuitarFX.com, I think it is, in Nashville. They've got a really cool setup there. Elmo, John Satella can always hook you up there. But amazing price. I don't want to say how little I've got some of these guitars for, because I've gotten.
Is it me? The body looks thick on this Tilly? Is it me, or maybe the angle when you showed it?
It's not necessarily thick, just a double binding on.
Okay, it's a double binding. Okay,
but not thin. But that's pretty much what you're looking at for that that make and model there. Again,
so you just
told us that you had some gear malfunctions. We could say this
Yeah.
in the past. So, but any gear you regret, maybe that was stolen, sold, or destroyed, or whatever? Do you have any gear
Very luckily
regrets?
for me, nothing stolen, but I try very hard. They say don't gamble what you can't afford to lose, and when
Okay.
you can't afford to lose much, then you hold on to it. I don't leave things in the car, no matter how tired I am.
Mm-hmm.
Even on tour, I've been known to try to stage my gear towards the back of the trailer, and then when we get to the hotel, everybody else says, it's fine in the trailer, and I'm like, no, I'm
Makes
taking it in
sense.
the hotel room with me, because
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Um,
so I'm very careful with that. The one guitar I did sell in Nashville to a friend in Oregon, who I'm hoping I could get it back at some time, was a 1997 Parker Nightfly. Uh,
yeah. No.
it's the Nightfly is the bolt-on
Yeah.
version, so it's a
Yeah.
little heavier, which I like, because the deluxe flies, I mean, they're so light they feel slightly awkward. But and I had it modded out with a Gibson 335 humbucker neck pickup. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that Parker just sounded fantastic. It was my number one for a while. Before I moved to Nashville, I was playing which is just, people are a little weirded out by it. They're like, that's a strange looking guitar, but I always liked it. And I'd be playing funk or jazz or something. And I'd play that through a Mesa Boogie, and I really loved that sound. So I'm hoping to get that particular guitar back at some point if I can get enough funds, kicking around for that. That'd be great.
Something like this. Let me try. I was searching for a picture.
Oh yeah,
Oh, but something like this.
yep,
Or
same body style. Mine was kind of jet black. That's like
okay,
the
but
mahogany NA. But yeah, and
something similar.
I had a modded out pickup configuration, so mine was a dual humbucker. Um, and I am such a simple man when it comes to electronics. I just
Hmm.
love like that just straight up three-way switch, on something with humbuckers. I mean, I would always I just found live, if I had too many options, it was yeah, that was a sad, terrible tale. It was terrible to live, and I had to spend so much money on guitars that week. But you know what though? You get through it, and I tried to keep my head up and remember the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shows that I played
Yeah,
without gear failures.
yeah.
So that
You've played a lot, and I can compare to your experience. I was only playing in a cover, or I've done some originals, but you know, a few shows a year, and I've never had any gear failure in all those years I was playing out. So it's interesting to get feedback from someone like you who played a lot and a lot and a lot of gigs, and limited failure is, yeah, because sometimes you hear people on forums saying they're having failure with amps and such. I'm quite surprised, or I don't know. You could comment better than I can, because I was only playing like 10 shows a year or something like this in the past. You must have been playing way more than I was doing. So
Yeah, it's funny, and I there's guys that are a lot busier than myself, but I
mm,
know, the one year with Jay Bragg Band, we clocked well over 200 shows
wow,
in a year, and that's all 4-hour gigs with very few exceptions.
mm,
So, and I was tacking on a lot of extra shifts. I know my week ended on Sunday, so for a while I was doing a double on Sunday to
okay,
end
yeah,
the night with Eric Holmgren band, fantastic singer, good friend of mine. There's just, oh my god, so many great musicians. Older guys, young guys. Eric Holmgren band had a guy, Matt Claiborne, playing for Sammy Kershaw now, and just fantastic players. It's really, I feel humbled, to have been such a part of that scene, and it's really scary. I mean, Nashville's strong. It will recover, but it may take a little while for the tourism and things to come back,
yeah.
and that's the
But
think the hard
I think it will be all around the world like this, not only in Nashville. In Montreal, everything has been canceled until the end of August. So, and we have some huge festivals during the summer. So this is a bit sad for all the artists and musicians and such.
Yeah.
So
The big hope is that, at the end of this, I mean, people will be aching to get out and hear some good live music. So I think, hopefully there'll be a lot of support for the music and musicians when that comes around.
So someone here has a similar experience.
Oh my goodness. It's funny. Cable wise, that gives me another one. In Portland, there's a company called Divine Noise Cables, Gil Divine, and I have one cable. They're relatively pricey. They're not cheap. My 15-footer is like $50 or whatever.
Yeah.
But the weight and feel of it is just amazing. I mean, I remember that when we had gotten ours, when I was working at Pro Guitar Shop, it's like, oh, this is just unlike any other cable. And JB, no joke, it's been the number one cable my entire 6 years in Nashville, and that's hundreds, and I mean probably close to, if not over 1,000 shows.
Yeah,
dancing on that cable in cowboy boots, and never one issue. So I would like to use all Divine Noise cables, but that one that I have is amazing, and it's great. I think I have right now my board is Mogami. No real issues there, but playing a board that often, it's just every once in a while I have to take it apart and deox it, and clean it out, because things get scratchy, and I remember for a New Year's gig, I actually had to wrap it in. I wrapped it in shrink wrap, because there's so many customers throw their beers on your stage at these gigs. So it got scary. I said for New Year's, I go, I'm not going to worry. They literally could have poured beer on my pedal board, and I would have been fine. but
it's interesting what you were saying about the price sometimes of pieces of gear, but in your case, it's your job, it's what brings bread on the table. So
yeah.
you don't, it's like a worker. You need the best tool you can have to make sure you deliver the goods each night after night. So paying more for a cable that you can rely on, for me, there's no price behind this. It's you won't go out with a cheap Chinese whatever made. Sorry for saying Chinese, but usually those cheap kind of cables come from there, and you don't want that cable to fail on you while you're playing live. And this is because you don't know if you're going to get the next gig if you don't have the proper tool for what you're doing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And for me, that's
time for a refill.
Yeah, I always think people ask maybe when they're making a gear purchase or something like that, and I always say you got to think, what are your needs and what are your desires? Yeah, cheers. What are your needs and what are your desires? We all desire maybe a flashy, expensive guitar, et cetera, but think of your needs first, and I always say I'm a utilitarian player. I wish I had extra thousands to throw around and invest in myself, but a lot of times it comes down to that value. It's like I absolutely need something that the value will show there. Yes, this cable costs a little more off the start. It might be double of another cable, but I know, again, I never have to worry about it, and it'll last a decade or more. So with whatever gear I'm buying, that's always something I personally have to take. I wish I had some crazy expensive Les Paul Gold Top, but I have this fantastic 81 Ibanez that, to me, it's just even a cooler story. It's like, hey, this is just I got a story to it, and so a lot of my gear's it's got stories, and it's not always the high end stuff, but I always love. It doesn't always have to be, I guess is what I'm saying, but you can get some.
Again, I'm 100% with you when you say this. You don't need to have the most expensive gear, but at some point you don't want to rely on super cheap gear also,
Yeah.
There's a kind of a balance to get. And I remember in my last cover band, the other guitar player I was playing with, he would have always kind of expensive guitars, and they won't stay in tune. It was like, and I was playing. Well, they're not bad guitars. They're Ibanez, the RG series, the old one from the late 80s and early 90s. I got those for like $200. I'm kind of, I could sell the bridge for more than that on eBay, I think.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You know what I mean? But those guitars are ultra reliable. I can beat the hell out of them with the Floyd, and they stay in tune. And I was like, I had paid like $200 for one of them. I'm trying to catch them. When I see them very cheap on Craigslist or a marketplace, I snap them. I think I have 3 or 4 of those in the back here. So
awesome.
but no, I always keep saying, have the right tool for what you do, know how to use your tools, and there you go. And don't cheap out on some components like cables or power supplies, or I'm playing from home these days. I don't worry having a very cheap power supply or whatever, but if I would go out, I'd like to have my gear. Make sure you can go through your sets during the evening, and nothing fails. And I think this is one good reason of the Katana is so popular. They're cheap first. You can afford one. It's for a decent price, and it's a Boss product. It's kind of reliable. You play many gigs with yours, and so yeah.
Yeah, they almost. I think they almost made a mistake in making it too good of an amp for too low of a price. I think was if they made any mistake, that was about it. And now they're trying to kind of think, okay, how do we get to that next generation market? Obviously the Artist was a good answer there.
I bought that. I'm a huge fan of Paul Gilbert.
Absolutely.
And, I bought that very fancy looking JHS PG14. I was drunk. I saw Paul Gilbert play it. I said, I need this pedal. So I bought it. This is almost the same price as a Katana 50 watt,
Yeah.
It's a single pedal. So sometimes I'm like, this is crazy, but I bought it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a crazy value.
I can afford it, so it's
oh,
I
boy.
didn't break the bank too. But
I've been trying to hold back. It's an old splurge I've been wanting to do with the old Empress Super Delay.
Yeah,
that was something I always wanted when I was at Pro Guitar Shop, and now you can get them used. I'm like, I could get one used on Reverb. I keep but now I'm kind of let me hold off, because all my gigs got canceled. Everything I had on the calendar is sitting. So I'm like, I don't really need any new pedals right now.
Oh, it's It's like you're trying. You were saying about practicing in such earlier in our conversation, and it's like sometimes you'd rather buy a piece of gear than go and try to learn your actual gear or practice or whatever. It's like Anyway, Wolverine here. I really got a lot of value out of your stereo pair demo. Is there a big difference from Artist to MK2 sans wet? Well, let's keep this out of that conversation for now, but it's a good question for the group. I'll get back to you on this. We were talking about gear.
I will say, I gotta say a real quick note here. Not to knock, I think the Artist is a fantastic amp, but out of the dozens and dozens and dozens of Nashville guys I saw using Katanas, it was always the 100 watt combo. It was never the Artist. I think, but again, think of what we needed it for. We're walking it up and down the street, so a heavier version of a Katana that cost more didn't really make sense to us. Again, I think they are. I think the Artist is a great amp. It looked more like my Mesa Boogie on the cab, and it made my back hurt just looking at it. So, I personally, I love the originals, but again, I think the Artist is a cool series if you don't mind the extra weight.
Just for the info of our viewers and you, I'm trying to get my hands on on an artist to be able to really compare them side by side. That's my Misselink in my collection right now. I have most of the katanas, but I'd love to have an artist to just say, finally, is it so different than a regular 100 watt combo, for example? So back to gear.
Yeah.
We all love gear. We all love guitars. Do you have anything right now you are like, oh, I need to have this, or I would love to have this, or we always have a kind of a list of stuff we'd like to have. And do you have something?
Yeah. There's always a ton, and again, my wish list again is utilitarian. I'm always trying to keep it within reason. I love weird, cheap stuff that sounds really good. That's always my hunt, is like, what can I find that can sit right next to something, 10 times the price, and where I'm not going to feel outclassed. So, again, pedal wise, I still want that old Empress Super Delay. It sounds absolutely phenomenal. I'm sure there's more modern, they probably made way better ones since then, but I'm not going to be running like MIDI or anything like that. I'm just like an old school guy. So that would be a great delay unit for me. Please don't go buy all of them off of Reverb, everybody, because save some of the cheap ones for me. They did a version for Pro Guitar Shop.
Are we talking this one?
It's actually the bigger. That's the tape delay, but the super delay would be the
super
bigger.
Delay. Okay.
There's the black one, basically with that same print, is the one that they did for Pro Guitar Shop. Here's the thing: it was sitting on the shelf. It was I think $460 brand new. Ouch. So I never wanted to play it because at Pro Guitar Shop we had over 600 pedals, and that was my theory. I was like, if I don't want something that I can't afford, don't play it. So I was never going to play the pedal. And some guys on tour, ironically from Nashville, came in, the band called the Deer Hunter.
That's the one.
Here we are, Empress Super Delay. That is the Pro Guitar Shop version too. You can get them used now for like $200. And this guy comes in on tour from Nashville, this band called the Deer Hunter. And they are amazing. They kind of remind me of Muse. If you've never heard them, I mean, they are a fantastic band. But the guitar player just starts painting soundscapes with this pedal. And my jaw dropped, and I got mad at him because I realized, well, thanks, dude. Now I really have to buy this pedal. I'm never gonna, because he made it sound so amazing. He's such a great player too.
That must have been something.
It's the player, but man, what he was doing to this pedal and the way it was also the pedal. It's fantastic.
And that must have been something to work for that shop, because you had access to so many gear.
Yeah. Yeah, Wolverine. In fact, it's funny you mentioned. I was almost scared to do the show because there are two pedals that I have that are kind of my cheap secret weapon. One of my buddies from Pro Guitar Shop, Nick
look,
Kula.
I just posted this. And he rocks.
Yeah, he turned me on a couple of these pedals, and I'm scared. I'm like, oh boy, if I never like to tell anybody about them because I don't want people to know about them, and then they'll all be gone. And I guess I should just spill the beans on that now, huh? I've got everybody waiting. Here's my dirty pedal board.
Oh,
it's very small.
Yeah,
very small, lightweight. I put this together on a gig flying back from J-Bragg from Maine. Mm-hmm. It's literally on just a wooden board with a leather handle. Fits in a briefcase. You can see I'm not very efficient, and I have terrible wire management here. But so when I set this up, I actually popped this over here, and here are the two pedals that are the secret weapons that Nick.
Yeah, that was one of my questions, and you're getting right to it.
Box compressor, DOD. If you notice the controls here: quartz, cream, pasteurization, spill. That is your level threshold attack. But anyway, there are two versions of this, and this is apparently the good version. it was in amazing condition. It's all dirty now, but great condition, mint condition when I got it. It's an amazing compressor unit. Just smooths out the gain. I do this. This is my favorite tuner in the whole world. The Sonic Research ST 300 turbo. Over here is a hand-built EP boost. Obviously, a little larger since my buddy built that for me. That's always on usually, and then a Noble's ODR1 that he built as well. This is a Big Joe Classic Overdrive. I just thought it looked weird and it was on sale. And I says, this pedal kind of, what the heck? And I tried it and it sounds amazing. And
you lost a knob. You lost a knob.
I kick things. It's I'm surprised I have any knobs left. Running into this Diamond Quantum Leap, mostly for delay, but it's really like it's a Swiss Army knife. If I hit this mode here in the middle, I can go, it has 2 forms of delay, an amazing phaser. I mean, just a chorus. It does has phaser as well. No, I'm sorry. Chorus, flanger, 2 delays. And then if you hold the tap FX, it will do different mods. Like it'll do a pitch bend, different types of things. Super cool, underrated diamond pedal. You can get these cheap used as well. And then the other real secret weapon, Gaetone vintage trim, super cheap. I usually have it turn intensity down. You can't hear it at all. If that thing is always on, it can do some damage. It's an rather amazing pedal. Again, always on though, with it turned all the way down, it will add a lot of high end. It's kind of like an EP boost, but EP boost is like that fatter end, and that one. Let's say if I'm playing a Telecaster and I want to brighten it up, and give it a little more feel, some more oomph, that can be there. So those are kind of secret weapons for an always on thing. The problem with the Gaetone, it does boost your level. So if I were to use it as an actual trem, I need to be aware of that and back off the volume on my guitar. But I am very intuitive. I play the volume knob on my guitar a lot. When I was younger, I never did. Now I just constantly, I'm rolling it up and down a lot. And that is a huge part of the dynamics of, your response of your guitar and tone.
I learned this about 15 years ago. And since then, it's been a huge discovery for me. Mostly when you play super loud, I was we were a mix of original songs and a mix of cover songs. We were playing like, let's say, modern metal back then, low tune guitars, very loud. I was playing my 7-string Ibanez, and I started using my Marshall as a 1-channel amp, and just using my volume to go to clean, from clean to dirt. And when I wanted more distortion, I was using my Tube Screamer. And that was a huge discovery for me as a player. And I think you only learn this when you are playing very loud. We were fucking loud, That was crazy. I had a 412 cab. I had my Marshall. I still have that Marshall, but I had my Marshall head very cranked, very loud, and that was fun. I just thinking about it. That was a lot of fun, but. The discovery as a player, controlling the feedback, controlling the distortion with just a knob, that was something. And you approach your playing also differently in those times. I don't know if it's hard to describe, but because it's so loud, it feedbacks so easily. Yeah, it was kind of fun. That was a very fun period of my life, even if I didn't gig like as you did. Speaking of gigging, you said you were playing like 200 shows a year and such. What do you prefer, a good guitar, a well set up guitar, or a very good amp? If you're called on a gig, I know it's kind of a tricky question, but I just want to get your feedback on this. You're called on a gig. Do you prefer? What's your call on this?
I think if it comes down to it, I could easily get by on a lot of styles of amps. if I had to, even if it wasn't my preferred amp, and it's happened, on backlines. Oh, no problem. You're welcome. On backlines, there may be an amp that I used to be more afraid of, or it's not me, and oh boy, here's a whatever, this has got a lot of high end on it, and I'm playing a bright telly. How am I going to do this? So I can deal with dialing in most amps, but if you got a guitar that's not working for you, oh my God, that is a rough night. Just if let's say the setup is making you work for it.
Yeah.
And not all mine are really smooth. I'm not trying to be too picky, but you know what I mean. When you pick that guitar up and you're like, this is not for me. Oh my God, that's going to be a long, for me, 4 hours, 4 hours stepping up. And then everybody's like, Gabe on guitar. And then, no, I'm playing your favorite solo on some Journey or Merle Haggard, whatever it is, and it's like, man, if I hate that guitar, oh God. So I was like, oh, that's the face right there. Yeah, that's for me. I could deal with a bad amp, but man.
I'm like you. I need my guitar to be well set up, or so I can communicate with the instrument. If the amp is just reproducing the sound for you, and if the guitar is badly set up, I won't be able to play. I'm curious. I saw a bunch of tele in your bag, but you're stuck on an island. You have 2 choices. I'm asking everyone that question: a Strat or a Les Paul?
I would personally go Strat.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
You're a single coil player.
Yeah, mainly. I did, and it's funny because, like I said, before I moved to Nashville, it was the other way around. But nowadays, it's something about the way it cuts and sits in the mix. For me, less fighting. You'll JB, you run a rather large group, so you may or may not have noticed, but most of the people looking, to cut through or having problems with, their mix and EQ, that's usually going to be more of like a high gain in a humbucker situation. And that's not to talk smack on it, because some of my favorite music was made on, Autumn Marshall and Gibsons.
I took note, of this.
yeah, but it's harder. It's harder to sit in the mix. It's a, and another thing that reminds me of is going. Yes.
We'll get back to this. Finish on the single coil.
I was younger, and I had an amp, that I didn't really like the sound, and I was complaining about too much or too little low end. I can't remember which one, but we were hanging out with Larry Carlton's son, Travis Carlton, who's a fantastic musician. He played for Robin Ford, and he's a world-class player. And I'll never forget, because he just looked at me and he's like, did you try turning the knob all the way up? and the thing was, like, I didn't. It's like, here I am. I'm like, oh, I wanted whatever it was. Did I want it up or down? And his first response, did you try it all the way up or down, whatever? And I didn't. I was kind of a noob, I'm like, oh, I was scared to. So when it comes to tone tweaking, get wild. I think sometimes people don't get wild. And if I'm ever questioning, like, what does this frequency do? Within reason, don't feed back, but just crank it, and see what that feels like. And does that feel good? Does that sound good for that guitar, that situation? And obviously different songs or things that you might want to cut or have a different tone, and throw in I'm a live player mostly. So what I'm doing's got to work. It's got to represent what you feel from your favorite album, but it's got to work with that band in that room in that moment. So I can't always just this is gonna sound bad. I can't always just dial in, let's say, a Guns N' Roses patch or something, which might work for somebody not out gigging, but my tone at Alan Jackson's on a song, they wouldn't let me play with Guns N' Roses, but let's imagine they did. That same song. If I go across the street to Dierks Bentley Whiskey Row with this huge stage and they're running, in-ears and stuff like that, it's just total different mix. And so I've really got a lot of factors, when I'm trying to think of like, how do I sound tonight? And then throw in maybe one band leader might be sensitive. I've had it where their ears are sensitive, and they're
You just opened a door. Are we overthinking as guitar players? And sorry to interrupt you, but
no, it's a good question.
I've been managing the group for over 3 years, and when I see some questions, sometimes I'm like, are we overthinking? People are always questioning, and sometimes just play. This is what comes to my mind. Just plug, play, and.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think life is balance. So finding that balance, and I think there's a lot of people in this era very out of balance when it comes to their approach with gear and playing, and that is getting overly gear obsessed for what, for what results, what joy, for example, me talking about these frequencies and like that, it's in an application, but again, it's the last thing I personally am thinking about, just.
Oops! Oh, I lost our friend. Oh, what happened? Oh well, give me 1 minute, guys.
Okay. Are you there? Can you hear me? Yep. One more try.
I don't know why
Sorry, bud.